objectives, or returning to the free skate mode takes way longer than it should. Starting a mission involves riding up to a floating marker in the world, which glitches out half the time and prevents you from starting it.
Additional features include several changes to the game world, including significantly more pop culture jokes and parodies, such as multiple Monty Python referencing, special random encounters, and self-parodying.
For the first time on console, you could play as a commander, which allowed a player to command the battlefield from a console or mobile device. The Levolution mechanic became a bigger part.
Hello and welcome to Worldwide Gaming. I'm your host Ryan, and I'm not very excited to bring you my Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5 review this week. Spoiler alert, it's bad. But luckily, we're going back in time to look at the development of the Fallout series and the impact of the Battlefield series on console. All that and more after the forecast.
The next game from Resistance and Ratchet & Clank developers Insomniac is Edge of Nowhere, a VR action-adventure game. One of the first third-person VR games, Edge of Nowhere is hoping that this will connect players more to their character. It is releasing on PC soon.
You shouldn't be here.
The sequel to the hit Vita game Gravity Rush is coming exclusively for the PS4 next year. Not much is known about this sequel, but it appears that the protagonist from the original will be returning, with new upgrades and powers. This abstract game takes influence from the simplicity and joy of twin-stick shooters, creating something new and unique. Players control two snakes, which they use to paint the world, dodge bullets, and pop enemies. It is releasing on PS4, PS Vita, and PC later this year.
The Tony Hawk series of skateboarding games are the sole reason I started skating, and also the reason that even around after 10 years, I'm nowhere as good as I should be. The games were such a big part of my childhood, I can safely say I've spent more time on virtual skateboards than I have my real one. The series was a mainstay in the extreme sports video game genre until a few too many subpar releases forced it into hiatus, and now, 8 years after the last main game in the series, and 13 years after the last Pro Skater, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5 has been released to attempt to bring skateboarding to the forefront of sporting games. This is the first main Tony Hawk game not to be developed by Neversoft, and instead was given to Robomodo, the developers of Tony Hawk Ride, Shred, and Pro Skater HD. Those games are considered some of the worst in the series, so I was reluctantly anticipating this new release. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5 functions like a direct successor to Pro Skater 4, meaning that a lot of the new features such as the ability to get off your board are simply not present. You still have reverts and manuals to combo your way to millions of points, but it does make navigating the levels kind of frustrating. There have been some puzzling tweaks added to the game, which seem completely unnecessary. New additions such as the slam ability, which propels you towards the ground whenever you hold the grind button during a jump, or the fact that you automatically wall ride if you jump anywhere near a wall, makes the game super frustrating. Especially if you've ever played any of the previous games enough to have the movement down to muscle memory. Although you will get used to it by the end of the first level, it prevents the new edition from ever feeling like the classics. Objectives in each level are sprinkled around the map and give you a variety of tasks to complete. Unfortunately, each set of missions is more or less copied and pasted across each map, so while the first couple of levels draw you in with its range of objectives, you will quickly get sick of having to jump through hoops, sometimes literally, to complete them. All other Pro Skater games had some objectives that were tailored to the level you're in, such as kickflipping TC's roof gap in Skull 2, and gave each area its own personality. As it stands, these new levels seem like they were just cobbled together in the game's level editor at the last minute. This lack of polish permeates the game and contributes to its lack of flow. The game will throw you in and out of loading screens so fast that you'll get whiplash trying to restart a particular mission. And the trial and error approach, which has become a series staple, becomes tedious as changing levels, objectives, or returning to the freescape mode takes way longer than it should. Starting a mission involves riding up to a floating marker in the world, which glitches out half the time and prevents you from starting it, so you then have to select the mission from a list. Then a loading screen will take you to the start of the map and allow you to skate around for 5 seconds before popping up the mission objective screen. Then, you need to wait a few seconds for the bar to fill up before accepting or declining the objective, and then finally you can start the mission. If you're new to the game or just not particularly good, this will ensure that your time with the game is a frustrating and short one, as it becomes clear that it's just not worth the hassle going through the nightmare that is a single player mode. This is mostly due to the frame rate, which is unstable for most of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5. It's common on Xbox One to not even reach 60 frames per second, and in later levels, which contain more particle effects and objects, you can push closer to 40 FPS at times. Obviously in a game that rewards split-second timing, this is a big issue and can often lead you to crash or suddenly stop grinding the rail, which just adds to the frustration. You'll also notice that the soundtrack will skip the worst of these moments, increasing the presence of the overall judderiness of this game. By all reports, the PS4 version doesn't dip nearly as frequently as the Xbox One, but still suffers in the worst of cases. You'll also fall through geometry or act in otherwise unintended manners with certain objects, and although it doesn't happen nearly as often as the frame rate drops, it can still destroy your runs instantly. The game doesn't have particularly impressive graphics, going for a more stylized pseudo-cell shaded look over realistic features, and the levels are incredibly small compared to some of the older games, so it's disappointing to see how badly the game performed on newer hardware. Online functionality offers absolutely nothing to the experience. When in single player, levels will automatically populate with real world players, but there is little to no interaction with them, other than a small message to the left side of the screen if you hit them. This could be the reason for the amount of loading screens in the game, as each mission needs to take you out of an online lobby into a new private game, then back again after completing your run. Online isn't just meaningless, it seems to actually add to the problems of the game. Even so, through my testing, creating a private session to make sure I was the only one in the game didn't help at all, presumably because the lobby is still connected to the internet, in case you want to invite your friends to this train wreck. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5 fails on all fronts to try and bring the franchise back. This clunky, rough mess should be avoided whether you're new to skateboarding games, or have sunk as many hours into skateboarding games as I have.